Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a bona fide rock star. He is the real deal. He's best known as the frontman of a former band who sold over 6 million copies between their 3 albums. He's also known for his extraordinary voice, songwriting smarts, and powerful stage performances across a 10-year career with one of Australia's most successful rock exports, Jet. Jet had hits such as Are You Gonna Be My Girl and Cold Hard Bitch, and as well as touring the globe themselves, were invited to open up for Oasis, the Rolling Stones, and Bruce Springsteen, to name a few. He has recently released a solo album called Sugar Rush, and right now is about to release a children's book based on the iconic Melbourne Skipping Girl sign. Please welcome all the way from Milan in Italy, Nic Cester. Nic, thanks very much for joining us, mate.
Pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Okay. Mate, you were born in Dandenong. Tell us a little bit about your Melbourne history, because a lot of people don't know that exactly where you were born.
I was born in Dandenong Hospital. Grew up in Dingley in the southeastern suburbs, right next door to Moorabbin Airport.
Yep.
The largest light aircraft airport in the southern hemisphere, I'm told.
Yeah, right. That was something that we didn't know. So there's an interesting fact. Yeah. And I thought Dingley was where the Hawthorn Football Club were based. I'm pretty sure they are, but I don't think they were there when you were growing up. So you're growing up in Dandenong.
Well, I thought it was. I don't know much about football, to be honest, but I thought there was some connection with St Kilda Football Club. Maybe it was one of the recruiting grounds for St Kilda. Right. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. So you've grown up in Dandenong, and a lot of people don't know you've actually got an Italian heritage, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that on your father's side?
Yeah. So my dad was born in Australia, in Melbourne. Mm-hmm. Both his parents were born in Italy. My nonno Ercole was born in Pordenone, yes, and left when he was about 16 years old. My grandmother Maria Camillo was born in Treviso. It's a little town called Nervesa della Battaglia specifically.
Yeah. How far from Treviso? Because I've been to Treviso twice, actually. It's a beautiful town. Beautiful.
It really is. It's particularly beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. And it has a lot of... it's quite similar to... Well, it's like you could picture it as like a mini budget version of Venice. Like it's got a lot of canal. It's got a lot of canals as well. It's very beautiful. So my think about this though. My grandparents grew up about 10 minutes away from each other. Yeah. But they met in St Kilda in Melbourne.
Right. And did they know of each other back then though? Did they know of each other back in the day?
No, they didn't.
Wow. That's interesting.
They didn't. So I guess I mean, like those Italian communities are pretty strong, so they just hanging out in their own small communities in Melbourne, it was probably inevitable that they would have bumped into each other. And I guess it's probably even more so people from your own. If you meet someone who's from your village, like hey,
yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, that's exactly the same thing that happened with my grandparents. My grandmother came in 1949, my grandfather 1951. They met and married in Australia, and had my mum. Mm-hmm. So my mum was born in Australia, like your dad. So tell us a little bit more about what that life was like, because you were telling us before you didn't speak Italian in the home, right? When you grew up. No,
I didn't speak anything. In fact, we used to go to visit Nonna and Nonna on Sundays for lunch, and I hated going. It was because I knew we'd get there. Mum would be pissed off after a while because no one was speaking English, even though they could, which she found pretty insulting. Then I knew that at some point Nonno loved Padre Pio above everyone and everything else. Yeah. So I knew that at some point he was going to come and get me and make me do the rosary and take me for a long walk and tell me all about Padre Pio. And he was from another planet for me when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So it was pretty intense. But I was always not scared, but he was so foreign to me, my grandfather. And I always saw him as quite a scary figure, and he had a deep voice, and he spoke about strange things that were strange to me. But then when I applied for my Italian citizenship when I was just before I'm moving over here, and I had to go, you go online and you find all the old files and all the old photos, and I was on the National Archives and I clicked this button and it came up all these pictures of him, and it was the first time I'd seen his face as as a kid, because he was 16 when he left.
Right.
And I almost started crying when I was like, oh my God. And it occurred to me in that moment how courageous how much courage it must have taken a 16-year-old boy to get on a boat for 3 months and leave everything he knew behind and study. Like, I really had a really strong emotional reaction when I saw his face as a child for the first time. And I felt a lot of regret for not making more of an effort to get to know him, because he was a singer too, you know, and I was aware of how much music meant to him in his life and how much regret he had at having to give up his career as a singer to go over to Australia to help out his older brother in his business ventures.
Yeah. Did Dono ever get a chance to see you at the height of your success? Did he know about that?
No, he didn't. He
had passed on.
He knew, like he knew. He was. I know that he was very proud of the fact that someone had made a career out of music, because that was always his goal. But he didn't know. I mean, he probably would have hated the band. I'm sure he would have hated the band. He hated Elvis Presley. You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So yeah, he would have hated us.
Mate, you'd be surprised. You know, you'd be surprised. I you know, like I know a friend of mine. He's got an earring. His old man just lost it at him for having an earring. And then when he realised that he wasn't going to take it out, he ended up going, look, we're going to a family wedding. If you're going to wear one here, wear this. And he opened it up and it was a nice diamond earring, right? You know, so eventually they give you know.
Yeah, I guess.
You know, Michael Bublé is Italian. I know he doesn't have an Italian surname.
Oh, is he?
He's an
I thought he was French or something.
No, he's Abruzzese, I think, from Vancouver. And he used to...
I thought that was just a fancy way of saying bubble.
No.
You know, like...
So he used to take his non...
Like, you know, Target is Target.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So going back then to the voice, do you think that you got it from him? Because you've got a very unique voice and an amazing voice. When do you find out that you've got a voice like this? This has always intrigued me. You know, at what point?
Yeah.
And tell us about your musical history, and you know when you first picked up your guitar and how it led to yourself and your brother having a band.
So, at every like family function, there was always my grandfather.
Yeah.
With Lambrusco coming out of his eyes, playing a piano accordion. He was like the human jukebox, and he and a couple of other. Of his buddies, like there were three of them, three guys with piano accordions playing all the old classics. So that was like even though it wasn't my genre, it was exciting, you know, because I could see how much passion that these guys had and how much they were loving it and how much it meant to them. Yeah. So that was kind of my first real interactions with particularly live music. But then on my mum's side, I had an uncle who more, which was a different kind of music. It was more sort of folk. He had a beautiful acoustic guitar, and he would play a lot of sort of more folk oriented stuff, I would say, like a bit of Beatles and stuff like that. And he was a massive influence on me, and that was really where my interest in guitar came from him specifically. So music was always kind of around, although it wasn't my parents, but it was the extended family.
Yeah, right.
And then I got a guitar, and then it was always, everything I've always done was just quite almost, I don't want to say pragmatic, because it was, I don't know where it came from, but it was just whatever I need to do to get to the next step. So I got a guitar, then I'm like, all right, now I want to write a song. Now I got a song, I need a band. Now I've got a band, I need a singer. There's no singer, so I guess I'll have to do it. So it was always just like this. I mean, and it still is like that, actually. You know, there's no, I don't know where it comes from, because I wouldn't say that I'm particularly ambitious or courageous, but I'll just do whatever I got to follow my instincts, and I'm not afraid to have a go, I guess.
Yeah. How old were you when you wrote your first song then? Do you remember that?
I wrote my first song within months of getting my first guitar, and it was absolutely
right. So you were in year 7.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you were very, very young.
And then we did our first. I mean, actually, I say I'm not ambitious, but now that I think about it, I mean, I wrote my first song a month after getting my first guitar, and we did our first live. I mean, we were playing shows in the first incarnation of Jet, which was me, the guitar player Cam, and my brother Chris.
Yeah.
We played shows at the Cherry Tree Hotel in Richmond before. I mean, we weren't even 18 years old yet, so that was pretty unusual, I guess.
So you
I mean, I don't even know why they let us. I don't even know why they let us play there. We shouldn't have even been in there.
Yeah, because that's an interesting part of your story is where it went from there. Because you started playing and then you thought, geez, you know what, we better get good at this if we're really going to play. You went away and then you came back. Just let me take let me take a step back there. So you start playing. Did you go to lessons? You taught yourself? How did that happen? And what what did you think when you first heard yourself singing? What did you think of your voice? Or did anybody say, geez, Nick, and did you then go to the teacher to refine it? Or you said, no, you just had it? That's really something that fascinates me, and I hope it fascinates a lot of people listening.
I mean, guitar was more just a fun thing. Like, I had a guitar teacher at school. I never learned how to, like, I mean, he became my friend. He was pretty young.
Yeah.
And he was, if I got to school and I didn't do my homework that day, I'd go to him, hey, can you write a little thing saying I have a guitar lesson? He'd say, no problem. Which was cool. Like, we became buddies, and it was better than having a teacher teaching me the sort of the boring stuff, because he encouraged a deeper interest in music. And we would go there, and sometimes we'd just talk about music the whole lesson. We wouldn't even play it, but that was even more important to me than if it had been some old guy going, okay, now you have to do this D sharp. I would have gone like, I'm out of here. Yeah. But this guy really, really flamed the fire in the right way. But then with singing, like, I don't know, like I don't think I even really realized that I had anything, that I was a particularly good singer until much later. And when people started telling me, I just, again, like I did whatever I needed to do to get to the next point. And I became a singer by default because there was no one. So I'm like, all right, well then I'll do it. Yeah. And then I remember but I do remember sort of practicing in my bedroom. I would put on songs that were a little bit at the limit of my range, and I would just, I would be so like, I would be pretty, I'd have the volume so loud that so no one could, there was no chance that anyone could hear my voice. Yeah, right. You know? And I would try and see if I could get up to this, if I could hit that note. Yeah. Which was, and I was like alone in my bedroom. But
how old were you?
Terrifying.
How old were you at this stage?
16, I guess.
16, yeah, right.
And then once I hit that one, then I'd find another song and see if I could get up to that. It was always just like trying to find the limit, to test the limit.
Who were you listening to back then?
You Am I. Like I was obsessed with You Am I. Yeah. I was into like just the classics like Zeppelin. Yeah. Beatles, all that stuff. Yeah. I wasn't really, it was more just always been more about the classics to me. Yeah.
And knowing what you know now about the voice, do you think it had something to do with hereditary, given that your great-grandfather was an opera singer, was a tenor?
I reckon it must have, because I never had any lessons, and the way that I sing, I've been told in theory, how I sing should, and we toured a lot, like every one show every three nights, 3 days on, 1 day off, 3 days on. Yeah. And I never leave anything in the tanks for the next day. I go for it. Yeah. And it never had any problem. Like I never lost my voice, nothing ever happened. No matter what I do, it seems to be indestructible for some reason, which must be just genetics. There's no other explanation, because I don't really have any idea of what I'm doing on a technical level. Yeah, right. I just go for it.
And what about Chris? Did he have a good voice as well?
Yeah, his voice is maybe a bit more this is the other thing. I really do feel like the voice is a very accurate and pure extension of your personality as well. Aside from the mechanics of the muscles and the throats, and because I can see the difference in our personalities, in our voices. Like Chris's voice is, maybe got a bit more personality to it, but
Right.
it's
Okay.
it's like it's wild, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Which is him. Like
Yeah.
he's a bit more like that, and I'm a little bit more reserved, a little bit more thoughtful, and and but also pretty reckless too. I can hear all of that.
Yeah.
I can hear all of that in my voice.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've never really heard anyone describe their voices like that. And given that two brothers in the band, and who both can sing and who both come from a family of opera or tenors, that's really fascinating. That is. So the band, you get the band together, you start playing around Melbourne. At a certain point, you reckon you guys say yourselves, we're not that shit hot. Let's before we start playing in front of people like this, let's go back and rehearse some more. Tell us about what happened there, and then how that led to your first record deal.
So I think it was a really smart move. As I said, we played some early shows when we were 17, super young, 18, and then I think we were. I realized, well, we're kind of out of our depth here and out of our, we need to get a lot better if we're going to, because it became very obvious very quickly how hard this was going to be, what a hard slog. And in order to make an impact or stand out, we really need to be a hell of a lot better than what we are. And we need to have really a lot stronger material. So we stopped doing live shows.
Yeah.
And we focused on rehearsing, writing, record. Like we recorded, wrote, rehearsed. Every weekend we'd sort of bunkered down somewhere and started really honing our craft. And we got good. It's not really rocket science. We really tried to we focused on writing songs, and we kept trying to challenge each other, and because there was the three of us all kind of wrote.
Yeah.
So, and it became like a fun, it was a fun thing, like trying to, you turn up and go, hey, check this out, check what I got today. And you're like, oh, that's good, and then it kind of provoked a friendly competition, but competition in the most positive of ways. It was like, wow, like he did something so cool. I want to do something. I want to turn up next week with something cool.
Yeah. And were you making any money at the time with music, or this was
no.
So you were working during the day. I believe you guys were, your brother and yourself were working in the family business, right?
Yeah. We worked. I operated my dad and my uncle had it's still there. They had a spice company, manufacturing spices, and I was the forklift operator, and Chris was the delivery guy. So
yeah.
And then we would rehearse in that factory in the evenings whenever we had our stuff sort of. It was massive, right next to Moorabbin Airport.
Yeah,
and
you can make as much noise as you can. Yeah. The echoes.
Totally, it was great.
Yeah. And
really
do you remember which one of your hits did you write first? Do you remember that? Do you remember clearly coming up, or who came up? Tell us a little bit about that. I think that's really interesting before we get on to how Jet got their record deal.
Well, again, 18 years old, and I remember those years I moved out into, there was like a bungalow in the backyard, which was the old shed really, and I thought I was cool and wanted to get my independence, so I announced that I'm moving out into the shed, and I remember my dad looking at me going, really? Go for it, mate. See how that works out.
Yeah.
And he was right. It was awful. It was fucking awful. It was freezing cold. I moved the bed in there. But that's where that's where I, that gave me the confidence to turn this, because I was on my own, and I would sit there and I'd write songs knowing that no one could hear me.
Yeah.
I would turn the stereo up really loud to see if I could hit that note really high. Yeah. So it was actually, now that I think about it, it was part of my development of having my own space where I could experiment, I guess. And I can't remember where I was going with this, but
Yeah,
oh
I
yeah,
was
so
asking you about which song you wrote first, and do you remember how
right,
you
that's
wrote
right,
it?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I wrote all my first songs there in that sort of secluded private space, and I mean the only seat was there was two rooms. There was the bedroom and then there was the bathroom. So
yeah,
I would sit on the toilet seat down, and that was where I'd sit and play guitar and write songs. And I remember like most of the song, all the Get Born stuff came from there. Like Arguing with My Girl.
yeah,
I remember. Um, I remember. I mean, I know there's a lot of comparisons with Lust for Life, which I mean, sure, it does sound like that, but I was listening to the Who. Like I was trying to rewrite My Generation.
yeah,
That sort of stop start thing,
yeah,
and using words that had a cool diction, like easy beat stuff.
yeah.
Like that was where my head was at. So I wrote that on the toilet in my bungalow, and
Wow.
I look what you've done. All that stuff was just I was like 18 years old, writing songs on an acoustic guitar, trying to think of stuff that would impress the other guys in the band when it came time to the next rehearsal.
Yeah, right. So you would take what you take a riff, you take some words that you'd written down, take it to the next meeting, and then you guys just add to it, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then
I,
we'd all expand on it. Yeah.
yeah. One thing that's really interesting about a lot of big bands, and I've heard them speak about this before, is when they first start out, they're poor, right? They're not working, they're not gigging much, then they're not well known, so a lot of them just live four people in a flat. They haven't got any extra money to go to the movies or do any other extracurricular activities. So all they do is stay together and write and write and write, and then they'll have a hit. Then fame comes, then there's money, then they're all traveling in different cars, and there's drugs, there's girls, rock and roll lifestyle.
Yeah.
And they sort of fall apart because they don't have that connection that they had originally. What have you got to say about that?
And I think that's totally accurate, and that's exactly what happened to us too, because it worked because of the foundation on which it was built. And as soon as those foundation shifts and it gets weakened by all of those external influences, then of course the whole dynamic is corrupted, and it's not going to flow the same way. I think that's ultimately what happened to Jed.
Yeah.
And
okay, so you guys go away.
It's pretty hard to maintain that, because I mean, we were kids, like 19. We just finished high school. We'd never been out of we traveling for the first time. We were in America. We were in Los Angeles, sharing an apartment. All like we'd never even lived outside of our family homes before. It was our first time living outside of the family home, and we're in Los Angeles, and someone's given us a shit ton of money to go and write it out. Like, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah. So can I ask you, when you left home and moved out in the bungalow at the back, where was Chris during all this?
Yeah, he was still in the house with the losers.
He was in the house with the losers. Here you are in the bungalow writing songs that would be worldwide hits, and here's the other brother in the house still with the family. Has it So where would you guys get together to rehearse then, or to figure out how to write songs?
I mean, it's fun actually. I never thought about that, but we'd never share stuff at home. It was always when we got to the rehearsal room, which was the factory, the family factory.
Yeah.
That was the only time when and also there was a real innocence to it then too, as you say. Like, we weren't even getting drunk. We would order a pizza and a and a 2 liter Coke and go for it. That was it.
Yeah.
So it was very pure and very, very innocent and very and just the right amount of even like naivety gets a bad rap, but I think there's nothing wrong. Like, there was a really healthy amount of naivety to what we were doing too.
Yeah. Well, I think that this, the naivety doesn't allow you to get affected by, it's not like you got to go, oh, geez, we've got to write a song like this because that's the way that the songs are written. Yeah, you let's just
totally.
do
Yeah.
what we have to do. So how do you start to get into like top places to play? Who gets you in there?
All right. So once we sort of took that time out and when we went away and then we say we have an enormous amount of material and we're like, all right, now we're ready, and things happened quick after that.
Right.
So things happened quick after that for two reasons. One, because we had genuinely gotten a lot better, and we had a bunch of songs that were really well struck, good songs. Then, coincidentally, that style of music that we were playing all of a sudden had become fashionable. Like, that was, so now we're in the early 2000s, and there's the Hives, the Strokes, the White Stripes, and that's exactly the kind of music that we were doing. So all of a sudden there was a massive global interest in the kind of music that we'd just been working on for the last year in our factory.
How do you describe that music? What sort of a genre was
I guess it was like it was like a return to rock and roll roots, I guess. Like I guess it was called at the time, I think it was like a garage rock revival was the
right.
And that was exactly the thing that we'd been doing, which was just an unbelievable coincidence.
Yeah, except yours was a factory rock revival.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there was no garage. We had a massive factory. We were just completely ready. Like we were rehearsed. We had all this material, and all of a sudden there was it was a global genre. Like, this is a global thing, and also as the cherry on top, it also became kind of exotic if you were a band from Sweden or New Zealand or Australia. That was almost, it was kind of part of the part of this revival, was because I guess the way that magazines were selling is like music had sort of been at a standstill in these remote parts of the world where people were still playing this kind of music the whole time, which wasn't true at all. But so it was just unbelievable timing, and then we got a show at a pub on the Windsor Hotel, which is it's not there anymore, on Chapel Street, and we got a residency every Friday night for a month. And the first night we played there, and it went really well. It was about half full. Then next Friday we came back, and it was full. Then the third night we came back, and there was a line out the front. And then the last night it was crazy. There was record companies there, people were going crazy, and we were.
So that's where people started hearing about you, right?
Yeah. And from there we sort of picked up a manager, and then and we recorded an EP, and that EP got sent it to someone in the UK, and then all of a sudden there was global record interest in us, and then we went up to Sydney to do our first ever shows in Sydney, and there was a representative of every record company in the world there who'd flown in from America, New York, Los Angeles, the UK. It was
on purpose to see
overwhelming.
On purpose to see you guys,
just to see us, and then it began this bidding war of all these massive labels trying to sign our band, and it was the biggest. I mean, I think it's still it was still to this day one of the biggest deals ever offered to an Australian band. It was unprecedented, and
wow,
it was, and then we
you head off to LA.
We went to LA,
Sunset Sound Studios.
Even that was that's where all of our heroes had played. The Stones. I mean, everything. That place was historic. Yeah. So we're in LA.
Who did you sign?
We did our first album.
Who did you sign? Who
in fact, we signed with Elektra Records. And before the album was even finished, we just were finishing the album, and then we got an invitation to open up for the Stones in Australia. So we flew back, opened up for the Stones, and then before we knew it, things were really happening. so then the album came out, and there was all this massive expectation and hype around the band, and it didn't really take off immediately. I remember there's a little bit of concern from the label, like, oh, hang on, what's happened? It's kind of stalled.
And this is Get Born, right? Your first album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the iPod, there was the iPod, which is brand new at the time, and Apple were looking for a song to
launch iPod,
to use for to launch the product it was a global campaign, and they chose "Are You Gonna Be My Girl," and then it just boom, exploded. And,
I think a lot of people. I mean, I think that a lot of people remember that ad, but didn't realise that ad kind of launched your career, just catapulted you guys into superstardom after that, right?
Yeah, it really did, man. It was. I mean, we were everywhere. From that, we toured the States over and over and over again. UK, Europe, Japan, like we were everywhere.
Yeah, and before we get into what touring life like was there, because I love backstage stuff and I love Rockstar stuff. What was it like touring with the Stones? Did you get to hang out with the guys? You know, what was that like? And who invited you? Did they say we want this band? Or did the Australian promoter think you guys would be a great fit?
I don't know how that worked.
Who was bringing
out
the Stones back in those days? Was it Kadinsky bringing out the Stones?
I don't know. I had a feeling maybe not Kadinsky, but I'm not sure. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, we ended up touring with them a few times in later on as well. We toured with them in Europe and Spain, and we got reasonably friendly with them and their crew, and they were disarmingly nice, I have to say. Like, I thought, especially in the beginning, I thought they don't give a shit about us. They probably don't even know who we are. But then Mick walks in our dressing room, is like, oh, hey, hey guys. And we're like, holy shit, that's big.
What was that like?
And yeah. I mean, it was amazing. I mean, actually, Charlie was the first one to walk in, and I remember because there's a lot of waiting around. It's a massive stadium, empty, and there's it's no one there. So we do our sound check, and then there's kind of not enough time to go back to the hotel and come back again. So we just thought, right, we'll just stay here, which is pretty boring.
Yeah.
And then we're all backstage. Someone opened a beer, and I think Mark, the bass player, walked into the bathroom.
Yeah.
And as he walked into the bathroom, Charlie walks in the door. And he's standing in the middle of that dressing room starting a conversation. Then Mark comes out of the bathroom and he'd just taken a sip of beer and just goes, just like spat beer across the floor. And Charlie just stands there and says, he doesn't say a word. He goes, I'll come back when you've all calmed down then. And he walked out. But God bless him, he came back. 20 minutes later, he came back and started. I guess they must be used to reactions like that.
Of course, yeah.
So, but they were nice. They were really nice. Then next time, fast forward a few years, and we supported them again in Europe, and they invited us to they had like it was somewhere in Spain, in Barcelona, I think, and they'd organised a party afterwards where one of the most famous flamenco dancer and singers was going to do a private concert for the Stones, and they invited us to that, which was pretty amazing. Yeah. Actually, Bernard Fanning was there as well. He came. Yeah.
Because he lives in Spain, doesn't he?
Well, he did at the time. He's married to his wife is Spanish, so he came and hung out with us that night as well.
Yeah. Have you ever toured with them with Powderfinger, or they had disbanded?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, right. Great band.
Actually,
I really enjoyed them. Yeah.
We supported their last tour in Australia, as that was when they announced it was gonna be their final tour, and it ended up being our final tour as well. So But we didn't know it. We didn't know it at the time, but that was actually both. It ended up being both our band's final tour.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. I got into them after they broke up because I was on the road all the time and I spent so much time overseas. I didn't even listen to Australian music for a long time. And it wasn't until I sort of got back to Australia that I got into them. They're fantastic. So that's a great thing. Who was the most fun touring with? Oasis? That would have been crazy.
Yeah, was definitely Oasis.
You got all serious
yeah.
just then.
Yeah, I was just thinking about
everything's just
well,
flashed back in front of you.
yeah.
Can you tell us anything
Well, I
juicy?
mean,
Can you? You don't have to go into too much, but can you? I'm sure there's people hanging out, who. Okay, it's me. It's me. I want to know. What was it like touring with Oasis? The sex, drugs, rock and roll stories. Something exciting. Because it was Liam's birthday on that tour, wasn't it? When you guys were touring with him, it was his birthday.
Yeah, it was. And
I could see you've just gone. Let me. Where can I can just.
No, I don't know what I can. There's just too much I can't say.
Yeah, well, maybe just one story, mate. Just to make us happy.
Well,
us listeners.
A few funny things happened on that tour.
Yeah.
One pretty serious thing actually. There was right around the time of that Hurricane Katrina. Was it called Hurricane Katrina?
Yep.
And I remember one night we were going to the next show. Mm-hmm. So between the shows, all the gear gets loaded into these massive semi-trailers and it's driven to the next venue, and they start setting up and then blah blah blah. So we get there and there's panic because the guy driving the truck with Oasis's gear in it has disappeared, like all their gear, and
he's disappeared with the gear, or just he's disappeared.
The guy is in the truck who's supposed to be driving to the next disappeared. Show. No, he just went off grid but there was a tracking device, so they're like, hang on, this guy's going in the wrong direction, and they got hold of him, and he turned out he had family in wherever Hurricane Katrina was in. Who was it in?
Was it in New Orleans?
In New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
So he panicked and started driving back home with all of the gear. So, and everyone's like panic stations, and Noel's got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of guitars alone in there.
Yeah.
And Liam, being the smart ass he is, just like, whoa, guys, oh fuck, my tambourines. All my tambourines are in there. It's like the thing that costs the least amount of money. But they got the guy, and he ended up making it just in time.
Wow. But
that was a fun tour, man, because it was us, it was Oasis, us, and Kasabian as well. So
right.
That was, and it was that tour lasted a long time. So we had and Chris, the juiciest story from that tour was my brother Chris, who after a particularly extravagant evening, let's say, we all went back to the hotel, and he was not in a good state when he left. And I tell this story because there was a book that was written that documented the 2000s and all of the bands involved, and I don't know, and so this story is in that book, except they got it wrong and they said it was me, but actually it was my brother. So my brother, we all went to bed. Next morning, lobby call, and Chris was always late for lobby call anyway, so there's no surprise there. But after about half an hour, we tried calling his room, no answer, and I'm genuinely starting to worry at this point.
Yeah. So
we had to get the hotel staff to open up his room, and there's no one in there. He's gone. Like his bags are gone too. So we're like, panicking. Wow. Like what the hell's happened? And then it was like we were like detectives, and then we find this like notepad next to his bed, and he's got like some scribbled his flight number, and we're like, what the hell? So then we eventually realized that he booked himself a flight to New York because he didn't want to.
Where were you supposed to be going?
We were in the middle of America. We were we were miles away. Well, no, we're actually kind of. I don't remember, but we were nowhere near New York.
Yeah.
And so he booked himself a flight, went to New York, and went to his favorite bar and just started partying there with I don't even know who he was with. So me and the tour manager had to, in our tour bus, drive all the way back to New York, which took hours. Go in the middle of the city, go into this club, drag him out, throw him into the bus, and then drive back the other way, back in the opposite direction again to the show.
How did you know where he was? I mean, you knew that he went to New York, but how did you know how to find him?
Well, I bet eventually when he landed,
Yeah.
because we were calling him, but there was no answer, and I guess he was on the flight. So
Right.
eventually he,
He said, "This is where I am, guys."
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not coming back.
Wow. And what about
So-
Liam and Neil? Noel and Liam, because they don't talk now, do they?
No, they don't now.
Yeah.
I mean, that tour was a particularly good moment for them because it was a bit of a comeback for Oasis, and they'd finally, because they'd never been able to crack America, and this tour was the biggest American tour they'd done. So when things are going well and everyone's happy, and so they would. It was just a great move. There was a great vibe in their band, in our band. Everyone was getting along. We were having great fun. We were having it was a lot. It was just fun. It was maybe definitely the most fun tour we'd ever done.
Yeah. And what sort of crowds were you performing in front of? 40, 50,000? Were we doing stadiums?
They were arenas, so like Rod Laver arena size,
Yeah. So
not
10,
MCG,
12,000. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I guess so, yeah. But some of them maybe because we did like the Hollywood Bowl. I don't know. I've never been good at estimating crowd sizes, but they were huge. They weren't stadiums, but they were as big as they get other than stadiums.
Yeah, cool. I hope you enjoyed the first chat that I had with Nic Cester. Coming up, Nic talks about whether or not Jet will get back together. He actually grills me with questions of his own. And we talk about his solo projects and also the children's book that has come out based on the Skipping Girl, one of Melbourne's iconic signs.